Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. And Huck is in the office today. Oh, you good puppy. Oh, you good girl. Yeah, she's making sure this is Huck TV. And she wants to make sure Dad does a good job, huh? Yeah. Oh, sure. He's a good puppy. She just wants more loves. Yeah. Yeah, sir. So, I'll do a good job, I promise, okay? I'll do a good job, I promise. Okay, good girl. Yes, you good girl. All right, friends. Here we go. This is a missing person segment. And we are... Okay, you want to go outside? Okay, go ahead. There you go. Okay. She does that every time. On purpose. Hey, Dad, let me out. It's fucking bark. Yes. Missing person segment. But before I get on to that, I got to read you a letter here that really evoked the anger in Dave. And it's about missing people. It's about search and rescue. The article's on Arizona Central, September 17th, 2023. Here's the title. Crews rescue 63-year-old man at Grand Canyon after he was left behind by a hiking group. Well, that's kind of weird, isn't it, Dave? I would think so. A hiker was rescued after getting injured and being left behind by other backpackers on Kanab Creek on the north rim of the Grand Canyon on Friday evening, according to the Mojave County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue. On September 15th at about 6 p.m., the Sheriff's Office received a call from a man using an Apple device through a satellite connection needing help, authorities said. I've talked to you about this before. I've got an Apple phone, and it has a device that can summon search and rescue through a satellite. And I think it's the only phone of its type that does this, regular cell phone. And I've told you before that it works just like a personal locator beacon. It's super reliable, good, and it'll save you $350 from buying a PLB if you get a new Apple phone. The Sheriff's Office said that a 63-year-old man who was at the time backpacking with 4 other people suffered a traumatic shoulder injury that required emergency medical attention. The search and rescue team responded to the area of the injured hiker's phone location. The Department of Public Safety Western Air Rescue helicopter deployed from Kingman, Arizona to assist in the rescue. Due to the limited landing area, the helicopter landed about a quarter of a mile away from the region where the injured hiker's phone location transmitted. When the crew arrived at the hiker's location, they were able to stabilize him and transport him onto the helicopter and take him to Flagstaff Hospital for further evaluation, according to the Sheriff's Office. This is where it gets weird. The Sheriff's Office search and rescue crew said that they later learned that the hiker's injury happened at 2 p.m. that day, and once the hiker contacted authorities for assistance, the other 4 hikers in the group left the injured hiker with the phone's tracking device and continued on with their hike. Yeah. Read that again. Once the hiker contacted authorities for assistance, the other 4 hikers in the group left the injured hiker with the phone's tracking device and continued on with their hike. The group of hikers had already been backpacking for 3 or 4 days and had another several more days ahead of them, according to the Sheriff's Office. It is unclear what time the original call for help was made. The Sheriff's Office advised to never leave an injured member of one's hiking group behind and to always make sure they are rescued before carrying on with your respective hike. It's disgusting that that even has to be said. Let me explain to you something. When somebody has a traumatic injury, shoulder separation, something that needs immediate medical attention, they can go into shock. Yeah, and that can kill you. And having other people around sometimes changes the mental state of somebody. That mental state can be the difference between life and death. Laying there on the ground alone with hikers leaving the area is not a good scenario. Never leave somebody alone on the trail like that. Do you remember when I've talked to you about being last in line and how those people that are last in line oftentimes disappear? Yes. So please never, never do this to somebody. Even if it means you're going to be a day late for getting out, so what? A human's life is worth much more than your schedule. And that's... When I first read this, I was pretty appalled, I got to tell you. And, you know, I know people are inconsiderate and they're on their own schedule and things happen, but I'm sorry, folks. It ticks me off. So, shall we get on with the first case? It involves a woman named Rilla Kelsey, 62 years old, went missing September 10th, 1940, about 4 miles east of Bacchus, Minnesota, and about 30 miles north of Brainerd, Minnesota. I've probably driven through Bacchus 10 times. And when Ben, my son, was going to Minnesota hockey camp in the summer, and that was in Brainerd, and I routinely would drop him off at camp and then go do a daily escapade, because you couldn't, as a parent, you couldn't attend all parts of camp, which was good. And when they had open ice or they were playing games or something, I'd go and watch. And I learned a lot by going to that hockey camp. I brought a lot of skill training back to my teams, a lot of new drills I never knew, so I learned a lot. But part of that was going into areas of high UFO activity and very high Bigfoot activity. The region where Rilla lived had tons of water, swamps, bogs, and these little birds about this big called mosquitoes. Yes, Minnesota has some giant bugs. Let me explain to you where this is. So Rilla lived just east of Bacchus. This was the search zone. This is Bacchus, Minnesota, Hackensack, Mildred, Pine River, Jenkins, Pequola Lakes, and down here would be Brainerd. And if you get a close-up look at this area, there's tons and tons of water. Over to the west was Foothills State Forest, but this area, you can just see it, it's just tons of water. Well, Rilla lived with her brother, a man named Fred. And Fred and Rilla had a farm. And it was near a place called Fawn Lake. Per her brother, Rilla was not feeling well the morning of September 10th. And how many times have I told you this about somebody? They don't feel well, point of separation, boom. Well, she woke up not feeling well. Well, on September 10th, Rilla walked out of the home midday. Fred thought she was just going to go out and check the farm. She didn't come back at dark. And Fred contacted the Cass County Sheriff and reported her sister as missing. Cass County responded, and immediately 2 deputies were dispatched. They did a large cursory search of the area. What do you mean by that? A lot of times when somebody goes missing from a home, a lot of times they're still in the home. Hiding under a bed, sleeping in a sofa. Sometimes they just go into a closet, close the door. It's bizarre, but it all happens. So they did a search of the home, search of the adjacent land around the home, called her name, tried to get her to respond, and then Cass County called for a canine unit. Super smart. Well, Pine River, just south of Bacchus, responded with an extremely experienced dog. Sheriff C.E. Mary joined the search and rescue over the swamps, fields, bogs. And it got into the 30s that night. There was no public access to the area, and it was supposedly very rugged. Now with that, you're talking about the 13th of September now. This all started to happen on the 10th. On the 13th, there are 200 acres were the focus of the search and rescue. Many of the men stayed tightly together, no more than arm's reach. They combed the area of those 200 acres 5 times. Dogs never picked up a scent, and there were no tracks observed. Why 200 acres? Well, because Fred said that he never observed Rilla walking out of that area unless she was on a trail or a road. So the chances are she didn't. On September 14th, there were only 10 men now on the search, and nothing was found. September 15th, the last day of the search, tracks were found near an adjacent farm, but the identity of whose those were never confirmed. And that's important. Why is that important? Because oftentimes searchers find things could be unexplainable. But nobody felt that those tracks belonged to Rilla. Now the sheriff made a statement the night of the 15th that men and dogs were cold and hungry and exhausted. The search area wasn't conducive to an easy search. Why did he say that? As I've stated before, search and rescue is done by people like you and me. In September, in this area near Bacchus, it is really hot, it is really humid, and it is really thick with mosquitoes. Horrible conditions to search under. Now, when searchers say the conditions were rough and tough, not like searching 14,000 foot high mountains in Colorado, let's say. Tough in their own way. The ground's pretty much flat, but they're going in and out of water every day. Now, Rilla was never found. Fred kept up the search for months. Water in the area went up and down. Fred thought that she'd be found sometime in the next 6 months. She was never found. But there was tons of water, like I said earlier. No tracks confirmed to be her out of the area. Dogs could never pick up a scent trail. Now this area has a very, very long history of UFO and Bigfoot sightings. I've stated before, one goes hand in hand with the other most of the time. And this is so true for this area. There's a Native American reservation just north of this location that I'd been on many times. In fact, Harvey Pratt, I sent him up there to interview some Native Americans that had Bigfoot sightings. And then when I was up there, I met somebody just casually who'd been researching UFO sightings up there for 20 years. He goes, "Oh, Dave, happens every week. People report them." And he said, he told me one time that a person came home from work and was standing there and saw a UFO like 100 feet above the water just hovering there. And I said, again, how often does this happen? He said, it's like every week, Dave. And this area of northern Minnesota has several people that have disappeared under the most weird circumstances you can imagine. Rilla Kelsey, never found. Does it fit our profile? Oh, yes, it does. Now, I know you guys like to hear about recent disappearances, and it's not like I don't like to talk about them, but sometimes there aren't a lot. Recently, there have been several. So, let's get on to it. The case involves a man named Charles Kelly, 56 years old. He went missing September 7th of this year. His family called him Charlie. He left his home in Kilcoltree, Scotland, September 6th. And he drove to a place called Glencoe. It had a ski resort. It's about an 88-mile drive from his house. He he parked his car for a planned hike. And subsequent police investigations said that everybody saw him depart the car and walk into the backcountry with his backpack, just like you and me would do. Nothing abnormal. The week prior to that, it had been hot. This week was warm. He carried water, backpack, food. And on September 7th, the following day after he left on September 6th. September 7th, his wife gets a call from him. And he says, "Honey, I'm fine, but I'm lost." He goes, I don't know where I am. I can't figure out which way to go. And his wife said that he sounded okay, but you could also tell that he was nervous because he didn't know where he was. Stop here for a second. This backcountry of Scotland is rolling hills. It's not mountains. Usually everything is green. There's no big ground cover, no big trees, no giant rocks like Half Dome in Yosemite. Very, very mundane landscape. They got some mountains that are they got some hills that are a couple thousand feet high, but nothing obscene. Well, his wife hears that news and she calls Scotland police. They send a police officer out to the parking lot at the Glencoe ski area, and immediately they start the search. This is Charlie. Good guy. Really good guy. Loved by many. So the police get there and they find the car, and immediately they start searching that area because they're trying to find witnesses. And they found some. They said, "Yeah, we saw Charlie," showed them a picture of Charlie. "We saw that man with a backpack leaving his car, hiking into the mountains." Okay, so they know that it wasn't a crime. Nobody abducted him, killed him, and dumped the car. He drove it there just like he told his wife. Well, now Scottish Search and Rescue really starts to turn it up. And search and rescue teams from Glencoe, Oban, Aerochar, all sent rescue teams to Glencoe. And the police make a request to the military, and they get the Royal Air Force to send a rescue helicopter, military helicopter. They also made a request for several search and rescue dogs. And the Her Majesty's Service Coast Guard sent a helo to Glencoe to help in the search. This was not a small effort. This was huge. And I got to admire Scotland for pulling out all the stops to look for Charlie. September 9th, really probably the first full day of searching, they find Charles's backpack. They stated that it appeared to have fallen over 1,000 feet over the backside of a mountain. They stated that water bottles inside were empty and that there was clothing and food inside the backpack. That makes me real suspicious. Really suspicious. Because if there isn't a body right around that backpack, where's Charlie? Let's pretend I dropped my backpack. I was in the middle of a 3 or 4 day hike, and it goes over the side of a hill down 1,000 feet. Well, son of a gun, folks, I got a long hike. I got to go get my backpack. Right? There's your food. There's your lifeline. Well, what they decided to do was put 2 helicopters in the air. And they're circling this area of the backpack. And remember what I told you. There's no big trees, boulders, rocks that can conceal anybody. They figured that they were going to fly over the area and find his body right away. But they find squat. Nothing but the backpack. So they thought that the backpack had fallen over 1,000 feet. Remember what other things have dropped and fallen? Missing 411, the UFO connection, folks. Well, several SAR teams on top of the helicopters converge on the area. And they spent 3 days at arm's distance apart scouring this area of the backpack. Nothing. Had another group of teams up on the top of the mountain scouring that area looking for Charlie. Find nothing. I gotta tell you, at this point, if I was the search and rescue people, I'd be scratching my head going, what is going on? Because you don't find a backpack and not find the individual in 90% of the time. One is next to the other or in very close proximity to one another. Well, he was last seen wearing a green fleece top, dark trousers, and a waterproof jacket. Rains a lot in Scotland, understand. Now, for the people out there who don't hike a lot, I gotta explain to you something. Waterproof jackets are great. But remember I told you it was really hot in this area. Well, there's technology out in jackets that something can be breathable, yet waterproof. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's true. All of Angie's and my coats, their raincoats, are breathable and waterproof. So you can be hiking along, it could be raining, and your coat's still going to breathe. You're not going to hold all that in, all that heat. It's going to escape. Check it out. I hope Charlie didn't have one of those coats that was like a piece of plastic and was hiking through it. Well, the SAR continued until September 18th. Yeah, about 10 days. Produced nothing but the backpack. This is the point that gets interesting to me. Brian Bathurst was a search and rescue team leader that was apparently the one that was given the task of talking to the press. And this is what he said. He said, "We've been over that ground with a fine-tooth comb." That was his quote. Now, if I was a search and rescue coordinator and I'm making statements like that, I'm darn well certain that that's what happened. So I believe him. And then he said, "We have real concerns for Charlie's safety." Well, I would too, because he didn't have any water. Water bottles were dry in his backpack, and he doesn't have any food. And then the last sentence he says, "We are baffled by his disappearance." Understood. And when somebody disappears above tree line in the States, or in Scotland, there aren't a lot of trees out there, you shouldn't be baffled, because people should be found. It should be pretty easy. How did Charlie get lost? Told his wife he didn't know where he was. He was lost. There was never a statement on search and rescue about his cell phone. Canines couldn't pick up a scent trail. A FLIR on the helicopters couldn't pick him up. It's a real whodunit. Now, a story related to this disappearance. When we were up in Alaska, and we were taking groups out in the morning and the afternoon to go fishing, as we're driving out, it's starting to rain. First, if you're going to Alaska, you take a raincoat. Always. I don't care what the season is. You take a raincoat because it rains there all the time. So on this bus as we're going out, there's some people dressed in some pretty light clothing. And I asked them, I said, do you have a raincoat? No, you didn't bring one. I asked another person, you bring a raincoat? No, didn't bring one. Okay. One of the people in our small little minivan that had about 10 people says, hey Dave, no problem. I brought some ponchos, waterproof ponchos. And they're in a bag that's about this big around. It's all compressed down real tight. And he goes, I brought 3 of them. So here's one for this person and one for that person. Genius. Genius. Now, we have those in our backpacks. Why, you say? Well, those ponchos are perfect if you get really tired and it's really raining. You put that poncho all over you and you huddle up and you'll stay dry. Yes, you will. And those little ones, they weigh a couple of ounces, so everybody should have a safety one in their backpack for exactly this reason. Not that you don't have a good raincoat, but what if you get tired and you got to sleep? You get all huddled up, put the poncho over you, take a nap. Now somebody brought up a really good point the other day. They said, hey Dave, what if your cell phone is about to go dead and you're lost and you're in trouble? What do you do? A brilliant statement by someone. Dave, tell your people that you get on your voicemail system and you re-record your voicemail message stating, I'm lost, I'm in this wilderness area, I'm on this path, and I need search and rescue. Awesome advice. Awesome advice. Everybody, everyone should do that. And you think, oh, Dave, come on, no one's going to do that. Oh, I guarantee that when you're overdue coming in, people are going to be calling and saying, hey, where's Joe? Well, last I heard he was on a trail somewhere. Well, let's call his phone and see where he is. When it goes to voicemail, when your phone's dead, all of a sudden they're going to hear that message. They're going to go, wow, we better call search and rescue. Giddy up. So, now, someone the other day asked me, Dave, are those devices that you have to pay a monthly fee for, do they cancel your service when you don't pay? Yeah, that's why they require the monthly payment, which is why I never use a personal locator beacon with a monthly fee. It's not that I'm cheap, but I don't need the monthly fee. All I need is a locator device to activate when I pull and I need help. So, my best advice, if you want one of those fancy ones and you can afford the monthly fees so you can send messages to your friends and family, do it. But you don't need to do that with a personal locator beacon. There are those with no monthly fees, just activate when you pull it. Now, other thing, we're coming into this time of the year right now where weather can change drastically and can kill you. So, I give you the first hint, carry a poncho. There's a lot of hunters out there that don't even carry a compass, or don't even know how to use a compass, or don't carry trail guides, or don't carry personal locator beacons. And I know a lot of family members out there are listening right now. Please listen. Your husbands and even some wives are going to spend $1,000 on a great rifle with a perfect scope, and they're going to think, I'll never get lost. It never happens to me. But I've written an entire very thick book called Missing 411 Hunters about hunters who never thought they'd disappear. And many of them were never found. Personal locator beacon. Or carry your Apple phone and carry a charging device. with the Apple phone in your backpack. Yes. Be smart. So, thank you for being here. You're very much appreciated. The weather is changing here in Montana, and I'm sure it's changing where you're at. So be careful. Check the weather before you go out and do anything in the wilderness, always. In the meantime, love your family, be nice to people, do something good for someone in your community. And the biggest thing, be nice to yourself, love yourself. Paulides out.